Admiral Lake, welcome. It's great to talk to you. Thank you for joining me today. I read that your annual budget's $13 billion. What are your priorities right now within that budget?
Sure. So within that $13 billion, roughly 85% of that goes towards operations and sustainment of the service. A lot of that goes towards military pay, and a portion of that goes to depot level maintenance. One of the priorities we have now is really balancing between that 85% and then the other portion of the budget that's used to recapitalize the Coast Guard. So it's always striking a balance as an operational component inside Department of Homeland Security. How do you balance frontline operations, the operations we're doing today, for example, on the southern border, and how do you balance that with recapitalizing the fleet of the future, because it takes several years of planning in order to get steel on target. And that's a really important balance to strike. We're at a point now in the Coast Guard where we've got to spend more resources and energy on recapitalizing the service while we sustain a heightened operational pace. Now, the good news is we've got strong support from our leadership in the Department of Homeland Security to do just that, to recapitalize concurrently with sustaining our surge operations on the southern border and elsewhere in support of the President's priorities.
What are the areas where you need to recapitalize the most quickly, in your view?
Yeah, so from my vantage point, that's probably in our cutter fleet. So our ships. So we're still operating Coast Guard cutters that were built in the mid-1960s. That's one of the backbones of our medium endurance cutter fleet. So think of the ships that do drug interdiction, search and rescue, alien interdiction. All of that is done by ships that in some cases are 60 plus years old. And we've done an incredible job sustaining those assets, but we need to recapitalize those at speed.
The way that you'll do that is through a number of different programs. One of them I read recently is striking that the Guard has purchased a commercially available icebreaker, which is, I know, a big need that we've been tracking for a number of years on this program. What's the story behind that from a financial management perspective to be able to make that move?
Yeah, so it's really a story about acquisition success to an extent. Is a national priority to ensure the Coast Guard in our nation has sovereign presence in our waters. We're an Arctic nation, and there's other nations that like to think of themselves as Arctic nations, and some that truly are, that don't necessarily have our best interests in heart. And so it's really important for the nation to get capability in the Arctic as quickly as possible. And this was an opportunity. We had a ship that was available in the market that was not being used. And so the Coast Guard went about and received funding, also some legislative relief from Congress to be able to move quickly. And from the time we got that money appropriated to us, the time we got a ship was a matter of months, not years, which was a great accomplishment for the Coast Guard.
So is there a lesson that you learned from that you think would apply to other types of acquisitions for the Guard or for other services or even the civilian side of government?
Yeah, great question. I think for us, we're doing a lot of introspection on how we buy things in general, right? Most of our acquisition, strategies, policies, et cetera, even legislation, really were modeled off DOD, and they're designed to buy unique capabilities, state of the market in some cases. And the Coast Guard doesn't necessarily, sometimes we need that, but often we just need what's out on the market. And increasing the pace at which we try to use those commercial item, off-the-shelf type of acquisitions, I believe, one, we can do that more effectively in terms of schedule as well as cost, as long as we're willing to give up some performance and capability. And I think as a service, that's that makes sense for us.
You make a tremendous number of infrastructure investments every year too. What are kind of the statuses of those infrastructure investments, and what are some of the biggest ones in your portfolio?
Yeah, so a lot of our investments in the past have been focused on rebuilding infrastructure damaged by hurricanes, and fortunately, as we've rebuilt resilience into those facilities. So we've seen, particularly in the Gulf Coast, where a hurricane rolls through. Right now, we just sweep the sidewalks off and go back to work. Somewhat of an exaggeration, but my point there is some of that resilience that we built into our infrastructure has been incredibly helpful in avoiding costs as well as ensuring we continue our operations in those locations. But in terms of other infrastructure investments, really those are focused on building out bases and facilities that are supporting our new assets that are coming online. So some of those big locations, Seattle, Washington, Charleston, South Carolina, Newport, Rhode Island, ports in Virginia, there are a number of other centers of gravity of Coast Guard assets. And it makes sense as we get these new larger vessels that we cluster those in these locations to take advantage of the increased infrastructure and maintenance that's required for some of these ships. On the aircraft side, similar story. We're making investments in hangars and new facilities to accommodate some of the new aircraft we're bringing online, replacing some of the old ones.